Welcome to the Kip and Chip Podcast, Episode 5. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good. Excited to record.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I always look forward to doing these, and I'm sad when they're over. This is number 5, right? Am I missing count? Or
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 5. I know it's still a small number, but at the same time, it's kind of cool that we've made it this far. I've really enjoyed each of the first 4, and I mean, we were texting just a few minutes ago. This is one I'm really looking forward to tonight. Yeah, so on that note, let's get into it.
It's gonna be a banger.
Yeah, off to a rocky start, but we promise the rest of it's gonna be good. So we are brought to you tonight by Tasha Sayer Photography, promoting and presenting high-quality photography to the families of Central Wisconsin. We want to say thanks to our sponsor for tonight's show. We look forward to future sponsorships. If you want your business to be shouted out on the show, just send us a text, send us a message, and we'll work something out. So, Sam, tonight I want to dig into, I've been thinking lately, so we're Packers and we're Bucks fans at the same time, right? And I think a lot of people out there are, especially those of us living in Wisconsin. As we've gotten into this Bucks offseason, sometimes it can be a little jarring to me to go from a Packers offseason where the team we're following, the team we love, operates one way, and then we flip to a Bucks offseason where the team we love equally as much. They're in a different sport, obviously, but we love them just as much. But they operate just a total 180 sometimes, so differently than how the Packers operate. So to me, it can be a little jarring, like I said, to support the Packers and say, this is the Packer way. I love and I fully support and I believe in the Packer way. And then to flip and see the Bucks operating totally differently. It's like my philosophies of team building kind of clash at times. And so I think today is going to be a good opportunity to look into how the Bucks do business, how the Packers do business, and even a little bit of how the Brewers do business. Which way do we like best? Which types of moves fit best in their respective sports, and kind of what we think. Do we prefer how the Packers work? Do we prefer how the Bucks work? So I think we got an interesting topic tonight. Do you have anything you want to say at the jump here, Sam?
I just wanted to say, give a little context on what's been happening the last couple of days for those that aren't aware. So the reason we've decided to talk about this is because the Bucks, what was it? Was it yesterday or was it 2 days ago?
I don't know. My brain's been ripped into a million pieces, and I'm still putting it all back together. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was yesterday, unless these days are blurring. But
that feels like forever ago. That can't be yesterday. It's been a long week.
But yeah, anyways, what happened was we're going into this offseason knowing it was kind of a gap year was the thought. Damian Lillard tore his Achilles, everyone knows that. And so we were, just kind of accepting next year's going to be kind of a wash because some of the other top teams, the Celtics, the Pacers, had their stars tear their Achilles as well. And so the East was pretty open, but you could just tell the Bucks were going to kind of take a back seat. However, they decided to sign Miles Turner, who, for those of you who don't know who that is, was the starting center for the Pacers, who were just in the NBA Finals, and was one of their best players. Seemed like a slam dunk that they were going to re-sign him. He was the best free agent in all of basketball this year, in a free agent class that was a little bit underwhelming. Turner was by far the best. And like I said, the Pacers were expected to do it. They were expected to finally go into the luxury tax to retain Miles Turner because he was so important to their team. But instead, they didn't want to go into the tax, and the Bucks capitalized. They got him on a good contract. Still a lot of money, but worth it for a guy like that, I think. So all the Bucks fans were just elated seeing they got Miles Turner. But my thought first went to, how the heck did they do that? They didn't have the salary cap space. And some rumors were flying for about 3 minutes about how there was a sign-in trade and maybe Kuzma got traded, and everyone was so excited. And then all of a sudden, all these reports come in that they are going to waive and stretch Damian Lillard. So rather than pay his $113 million he's owed over the next 2 years, with him being injured this whole year, they decided to stretch it. So now it's $23 million per year for the next 5 seasons, which is tough to stomach. Just dead cap money they're gonna have to pay regardless. But they decided to prioritize contending this year with Giannis instead of taking a year off and just having a guy sit on their roster that was injured. And so that's just a little bit of context to what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I think it's important to start this conversation by saying that before we went into free agency, we were both kind of resigned to the fact that this was not going to be a season where the Bucks seriously contended for a title. I think we probably saw them as a playoff team, maybe a play-in team, but not a whole lot more than that. I think they are better now than they were 3 days ago, but I still don't think either of us are under grand illusions that this is a championship team. Maybe I'm speaking for you, but I think you're on the same page as me. Yeah, they're better, but they may have gone from the 13th best team in the league to the 8th best team in the league.
Yeah, I honestly was thinking about it before free agency that I would have put the Bucks in like the 6th seed would be a really good result. I was thinking more like 7, 8, maybe even 9, kind of in the play-in. But now after this trade, I think they're firmly in a discussion with some of these other teams that have improved as well, like the Hawks and the Magic and the Pistons. I think they're in that kind of 4 to 6 range again, and so we have a little more hope going into next season, especially with so many injuries and some of the top teams being really thin at this moment. But still, yeah, it's not like we're all of a sudden super excited again, but it gives us a little more hope, and there's going to be some more fun things that come out of this season than would have been without the signings and the cut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. I don't want to talk about it too much now. I don't want to bury the lead. So let's get into this. We've got one more roster spot on the Bucks that's open. I'm sure you saw a couple hours ago they cut Chris Livingston, which is something you had very smartly pointed out was probably going to happen a few weeks ago now. Couple options with that last roster spot. They could just sign Bogi Markovic, the new rookie second-round pick, to a standard contract. I think a lot of people are expecting it to be a free agent guard. Couple options out there. There's been reports around Malcolm Brogdon. Russell Westbrook is a name that's still out there, and then Ryan Rollins is also a guy that's had experience with the team. They've got that one roster spot left. What would you like to see him do?
Well, they technically have 3 now, I think, because they had 2 open, and then this makes a 3rd, cutting Livingston. I'm almost positive it's going to be Ryan Rollins taking up one of those spots. And they have 3, assuming Bogoljub isn't one of them. And so I think if Bogoljub comes back, that takes the second one. And then I think there should be 1 left to go get a Brogdon, is my hope, or someone like that. And man, I wish I didn't hate Chris Paul, because Chris Paul I think would be a good fit. And there's been some talk about it, but I don't think there's any way that they're going to sign off on that, because first of all, Chris Paul has talked about wanting to be close to his kids again in LA. So I don't think he's going to Milwaukee, but there's just too much history there. So, and I'm not on board with the Westbrook thing. I don't.
You're not?
No, like it would be fun, but I don't think he's what we need. And so,
well, I would love to say that Westbrook played for the Bucks, and what better season than this, when a season all we need is some dude to randomly put up stats on a regular season night. Like, who cares if he sucks in the playoffs? It's not like we're really going to do a ton in the playoffs anyway, which is the wrong way to think about it, but I think it'd be pretty cool to have Westbrook on the team.
Yeah, if that report came out, I think I would be excited just because it's Westbrook, but I really think this year is going to be super point Giannis heavy. And so I think KPJ, there's going to be a lot of moments where he's the primary ball handler. When Giannis is off the floor, he's going to be out there a lot. And obviously sharing the floor with Giannis. But I think when Giannis and KPJ say they're in the starting lineup together, it's going to be Giannis bringing the ball up the court a lot. That's what they talked about in their postseason presser after the loss to the Pacers, is next year is going to be super point Giannis heavy. And so my hope is they bring in another spacer, like a guy like Brogdon that can handle the ball but also is a great three-point shooter, so that he can play off of Giannis as well. And so that's why I think with Westbrook it'd be a little shaky, because he's not a shooter at all. I'm going to take the ball out of Giannis' hands, but there's going to be a lot of times when that's necessary when Giannis isn't on the court. So my hope is a Brogdon, Rollins, and Bogey taking the last spot, I think.
Yeah, Rollins has to be involved in it, in my opinion. I mean, we talked about him a couple weeks ago. He was one of the few guys we gave an A+ in that ranking show. One of the guys that we talked about giving us some sort of hope for 2025-26. So Rollins has got to be involved in whatever happens, in my opinion.
Yeah. Just real quick, do you have a preferred starting lineup with the current roster if nothing else happens?
I saw, those ESPN projected potential starting lineup graphics.
Mm-hmm.
So it was KPJ, Gary Trent, Kuzma, Giannis, and Miles Turner. And I just saw it and was like, like I want to take time to say on air, thank you so much to Gary Trent. As a Bucks fan, I really hope that you play well this year, and the Bucks get to reward you with your bird right extension next season. And I hope this is all worth your while. Thanks for coming back. I'm happy to have him as the starting two guard. I'm incredibly happy with Giannis and Turner at power forward in the center. But everybody knows how I feel about Kuzma. But like I've said before, there have just been multiple teams who have said, preseason, KPJ can slot in as our starting point guard this season. The Rockets, the Cavs have both said it in the past, and he crashed and burned for both of them. I think there's going to be games where Kevin Porter Jr. starts, but a big part of me is like, I'd love to see Ryan Rollins start 40 games this year and just see how it goes. Or if we sign Brogdon and Rollins proves he can't handle it, that'd be sad, but let's let Brogdon start. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of putting that much on the shoulders of Kevin Porter Jr. and for no other reason. I mean, he played good enough to show he could do it at times this past year for the Bucks, but just his history is too shaky for me to put a ton of faith in him.
Yeah, plus he shot 41% from the three with the Bucks last year, which is so high above anything he's ever done. And so I don't think that's going to be something he does again. But I feel like all of his threes he made, too, were the ones that, like, clank against the back of the rim, and none of them were pure. So, I don't know. He was shooting lucky, but I agree. I hope they bring back Rollins or make some move. Something to keep an eye on. The Hornets now have LaMelo Ball, Trey Mann. They traded for Colin Sexton, and they just signed Spencer Dinwiddie. I was hearing we always hear stuff about Sexton, and I think that's a name to continue to keep an eye on, even though he just was traded there. They were able to retain Mann and get Dinwiddie as well, and so they need some big wings. Maybe they'll be interested in Kuzma, and at this point, the Bucks seem to be all in on this year. Maybe we see that pick get traded. I kind of hope it doesn't, because that's our one hope, the 2031 pick. They blew up everything else. I was just happy to see that they kept that pick, but I honestly won't be surprised if it gets traded for a guy like Sexton or something like that to bring in a real point guard.
Yeah. Interesting things are afoot, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to just kind of a quick question to start up the show. And I think that the last couple years, I've really noticed it this year, the kind of the undertone to the NBA off seasons as a whole for every team has been centered around the second apron, the new CBA that was focused on bringing parity to the league, making it harder for dynasties to form, and once they form, harder for them to stay together. A lot of teams have been having to make moves to stay away from the penalties related to the second apron. So I just want to start really broad, macroscopic view, zoomed out. Are you a fan of the new CBA and these second apron restrictions and what they've done to the NBA?
I personally love it. And the reason I say that is because we grew up in an era where it was so super team heavy. And we kind of grew up in the era where it was transitioning to that with the Heat and the Warriors. And it was fun in the sense of there was villains. There was always villains. You look at the Heat. Me and you were both on the side of the Spurs, where we cheered for the Spurs and we hated the Heatles. And we both didn't like the Warriors. We wanted LeBron to do it. And so, I think we both are on the side of we like these small market teams that build a team the right way. And that's what we saw this year with the Pacers, too, and the Thunder, to be honest. Both these teams built their teams the right way. And it was one of my favorite finals in recent memory because they all did it the right way. And I just wanted to share some stats real quick. I saw this on Twitter the other day and couldn't find the tweet again, so I went to Reddit. But I wanted to read, let's go like the last, since 2012, I'm going to read the amount of luxury tax that the NBA champions spent during that season. Okay. So this is really intriguing. Let's start with 2012, 2013. That's the Heat. That's the second time they won with the Heatles. They spent $13 million in luxury tax. Okay. The Spurs the next year won, and they spent $0 in luxury tax.
That was that 2014 Spurs team is the coolest team ever. It's crazy they spent $0.
Yeah, it's so cool. Then this is cool too. Remember the Warriors numbers that I say, okay?
Okay.
2014, 2015, the Warriors spent $0, and that's the year that Curry really came into his own.
Yeah.
They had all the role players like Livingston and Barbosa and those guys that played out of their minds.
Kyrie got hurt in the finals.
Yep, Kyrie and Kevin Love, I'm pretty sure. 2015 and 16, this is the year that the Cavs won. They spent $54 million in luxury tax.
Whoa.
So they finally got LeBron some help, and they were healthy for that finals. 2016, 2017, the Warriors once again spent $0 in luxury tax. 2017, 2018, this would have been this is the second year with Durant, I think. They spent $32 million. So went from $0 to $32 million. Then the Raptors team in 2019 spent $25 million. The Lakers in the bubble year spent $0. So another peer run. The Bucks barely were in the luxury tax, $790,000. But then the Warriors in 2022, the resurgence year with Curry beating the Celtics, spent $170 million in luxury tax. And so, like, over 3 times what we've ever seen. And that after they won, that's when the CBA started to come into discussion because they totally bought that championship. And they had some great things happen, like they were able to draft Jordan Poole and James Wiseman. He didn't really help them much, but the CBA became relevant because of that. And so, like you already introduced, it's better because it's limiting the super teams, it's limiting dynasties. And you even think about the Thunder. The Thunder have such a deep team with so many good players, but a couple years from now, they're going to have half the roster they currently do because they're going to have to pay all those guys. And so, but if that wasn't the case, if we didn't have this hardcore CBA, that could be a dynasty for the next 5 or 6 years. So
maybe more than that.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. That Warriors team, I forgot that because that was kind of the team that pissed off CJ McCollum because they bought Andrew Wiggins, they bought Gary Payton, guys like that, and that changed everything for them. So I looked up some numbers too because the NBA has had a different champion in 6 straight seasons. It's only the second time in NBA history that's happened. I want you to guess. So that means ever since the Raptors won the title, since 2018, there's been a different champion every year. So I'm going to go from 1996, Jordan's 4th title, all the way up to 2018, which was KD's 2nd title with the Warriors. So that would be 24 seasons. I want you to guess how many different champions there were in those 24 seasons.
Ooh. I could try to figure it out, but I'm just going to guess. You said 24 seasons?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 9.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Oh.
There was 9 champions in 24 years, and then in the last 6 years, there's been 6.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I know some people will argue, but I think what we're going through now with the parity is far and away better than what it had been for the 24 years prior to that. And I was kind of thinking about this too, because I do remember growing up, like the Spurs and the Heat in the finals, or the Warriors and the Cavs in the finals. Those NBA finals were incredible series, and everybody looked forward to, like 2014, everybody kind of knew it was just going to be the Spurs and the Heat back again, facing off for the second straight year. And I was so psyched that when it like became clear that that's actually what it was going to be, because that 2014 finals year was amazing. It was such a great series. So I kind of wonder, do you think it'd be correct to say that back in the age of dynasties, maybe the NBA finals to the casual fan were a little more interesting?
Yeah.
But the regular season and then the first 3 rounds of the playoffs were way less interesting because we all knew what was going to happen in the end.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of a casual fan because I'm so far from it. I know you agree with that too. But yeah, I think less people watch the finals, and like I mentioned before, there's less villains in the NBA because it's not like it was almost like political parties back in the day. Whereas, are you a Heat fan or are you a Spurs fan? And so and there would be heated debates on, are you seriously a bandwagon Heat fan? Stuff like that. I remember getting mad at kids that were. And the same thing with the Warriors too. I hated Warriors fans. But looking back on it, I didn't like LeBron when he was on the Heat. Why did I cheer for him when he was on the Cavs? But it was just that part I do miss. But I think it is better for the diehard fans to be able to get excited about free agency and trades and be able to know that their team can build up their way to a championship within just a couple years.
Yeah. I still think the NBA doesn't do a great job celebrating all the teams and all the franchises. But maybe it was just because our team sucked back then. But it was so much easier to get interested in the finals because it was the same teams every year. But then I just never remember sitting down and watching Tuesday night on TNT unless it was a regular season game that involved the Warriors or the Cavs or the Heat or the Spurs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, back in those days, I remember I just said what you said because I was like 12, but I remember you would say, oh, I just like watching basketball for the players. Like you're a big D Rose fan and stuff like that. And I did that for the longest time because we would literally just wait for the finals to come around and be like, oh, yeah, I'm a Spurs fan. And that's when I finally was like, okay, I need to pick a team and pick the Bucks. But, yeah, it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, different time. I wanted to go over a couple trades that have happened because of the CBA. One of them is that Jordan Poole trade to the Wizards. Like, the Warriors had to make that trade because of the CBA. Another one I think of, the Celtics just had to drop Kristaps and Jrue Holiday. Had to happen because of the CBA. I mean, you talked about the Thunder are going to be totally gutted over the next few years. The Knicks are another team. Even with Brunson's pay cut, they're kind of a ticking time bomb with, what they're going to be able to do for the next year or two before they have to break it up. So one thing I do think is sad is you're never going to see the same team grow together for a decade like we used to sometimes see, like the Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan playing together for their entire careers. That's just so rarely going to happen going forward because of the CBA.
Yeah, and then you look at the Pacers, which I brought up earlier, didn't even pony up to keep their core piece that's been there for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And, so some ownership is cheap, and that's when you still get a little bit of difference. It's not like the salary cap is equal and that the CBA is limiting teams to all be equal, but there's still teams that can pay up for 2 to 3 years and really go for a run, but then it limits them and they have to come back down to earth. And so I do like that there's still that element of it.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people have heated opinions on that, but I'm kind of glad you agree because sometimes I feel like I'm on an island of just very clearly thinking that the CBA is better now than it was 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have someone agree with me on that. Any other thoughts you want to share before we move on?
No, let's get to the next topic.
Okay, so this is primarily a podcast for Wisconsin sports fans. So going through the three teams, we all support the Bucks, the Brewers, and the Packers. But we talked about it earlier. They're so different. I kind of want to run through each team, talk about the management styles, how they're a little bit different, and then I have a couple, fun segments for you I want to talk about after. So starting with the Brewers, neither of us are huge baseball fans, but living here in Wisconsin, people love the Brewers. One thing I've noticed is everybody is totally resigned to the fact that the Brewers are never going to win a World Series. Everybody kind of gets excited about them. Right now they're on a hot streak. They've got one of the best records in baseball over the last month and a half. Everybody gets excited about it and enjoys the regular season for their random wins against the Twins or the Pirates, but no one ever talks themselves even into considering the fact that the Brewers might win the World Series. And I know baseball's different. They've got a really cheap owner. They're never going to be able to keep even half of their really good players that they develop. And that's the reason why they'll never win. But that's a team that doesn't seem to care about winning a championship. We transition to the Bucks and the Packers, and it's very different in my opinion, that switch up from the Brewers to these other two teams. So Sam, if you had to say, just real quick, what's your general synopsis of how you feel the Bucks, team building strategy, how does that play out? What does that look like to you?
Okay, where to start? I think it's crazy how much of a difference changing GMs can make, because I don't know if you remember the old GM, John Hammond. Never did anything really. Was a lot like Ted Thompson for the Packers, just kind of like drafting guys and hoping things would pan out, make little signings, but no one wanted to go to Milwaukee anyways. But then when John Horst became the GM, it was fairly quick. He started making moves, and he started thinking, we have this up-and-comer Giannis. He's going to be, an all-NBA player soon. We're going to start preparing for a world when this team can contend. And so ever since 2017, when Horst took over, everything has been about Giannis. Mm-hmm. And so he made that trade. They signed Greg Monroe. I think that was Hammond that did that. Horst quickly gets in there, trades it for Bledsoe, who was an up-and-coming player, and totally reshaped the Bucks. Made them a defensive masterpiece, and was a fun player for a while. Then quickly it was like, wait, Bledsoe's great. He sucks in the playoffs. Let's trade him for Jrue Holiday. They make that trade. The Bucks win the championship that year. And that, it's important to note, that year is when Giannis was starting to let rumors get out about he might leave after this contract. And so trading for Holiday, Giannis immediately re-signs. They win the championship. He was aggressive.
That was the one time I ever really considered it. Like you said, that was the one summer where I was like, oh, Giannis might actually leave, but he totally saved it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I skipped a couple steps before that. He was making trade deadline trades, like going after Mirotic, guys like that, trying to load this team up to make a playoff push. And those trades helped, but they didn't push him over the edge until Holiday. And then even after the Bucks won a championship, he wasn't scared to part with one of Giannis's best friends, probably the second, no, not second, Middleton was definitely second, but the third most important piece to that championship run. Just a couple years removed from that, trades Holiday for Damian Lillard, a trade that shocked everybody because no one thought Milwaukee would be a player. And so that's what was big to me, is that when they were talking about where's Dame going to go, it's the Heat, the Lakers, the Warriors, the Celtics, all these big market teams. But here comes Horst being aggressive because he wanted to get a guy for Giannis, because that's another contract year that Giannis was in. And so Giannis signed right after that trade. And, you can, I don't know for sure if Giannis is weighing in on all these decisions, but that it's at the center of his mind. This is a Milwaukee franchise. They don't have as much money as other franchises, don't have as much exposure, but they have the best player in basketball. I'm sure Horst believes he's the best right now. I believe he's the best player in basketball.
I do too.
And so he makes that decision. We're going to put all of our marbles in on him, because who knows? It could be another 50 years before we have a player even close to what Giannis is. Because the Bucks are terrible at drafting.
Yeah, they're so bad. And 50 years might even be an understatement. There's a real chance that Giannis will forever be the best Buck to ever play in Milwaukee.
Yeah. No, I would put my money on that.
Yeah.
And so it's a scary world to live in when you have to hit on a draft pick, and also when the lottery, like you could have the worst record in basketball, but you won't even get the first pick. You could get the 8th pick, and so trying to bank on let's just rebuild. I've all of a sudden changed my mind because when the Bucks lost this year again for the 3rd straight year in the first round, part of me was like maybe trading Giannis would be a good idea. Maybe we need to rebuild because we've seen other teams do it and succeed. But I spent about 15 seconds thinking about it and then decided, nope, let's do whatever we can to keep Giannis. And that's clearly what the Bucks front office is thinking. So once again, they go make a splash, cutting one of Giannis's friends, Lillard, that never panned out, and bringing in Miles Turner. So I really like the direction of the team. It's been really aggressive and really frustrating at times when they trade away guys like DiVincenzo, who are up-and-coming players, for old heads that don't do anything. So a lot of frustration, but you can't blame Horst for having the balls to trust Giannis and to do whatever he needs to do to keep him happy and keep him in competition.
Yeah. And I don't think people understand how difficult that has probably been all these years to keep Giannis where he is, to keep Giannis as happy as he's been, to have won a championship in Milwaukee, and to have had all this other success. Like, John Horst got hired for that job in 2017, and ever since then has been laser focused on one thing, and that one thing is the present. Mm-hmm. And the reason he's so laser focused on the present is because that guy cares singularly about not wasting a single second of Giannis Antetokounmpo, mm-hmm. which is what I love, because I truly think, yeah, he's made a ton of mistakes on the way, and he deserves a lot of the criticism that he's gotten. Mm-hmm. But man, Horst has had the stones to make some moves that not a lot of people would have been able to do. And he's really put his neck on the chopping block in a lot of different situations to chase after that one goal of keeping Giannis in Milwaukee and not wasting a single second of his career. And yeah. I'm with you. Like, the more I think about it, I am wholeheartedly on board with trying to keep him, because it doesn't matter if they trade him for 2, mid-level salaries and 6 first-round picks and 6 swaps and 10 second-round picks. Mm-hmm. All of those picks combined are most likely not even going to equal half of what Giannis is right now.
Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to point out, I pulled up all of the trades and signings that John Horst has made since coming in, and I was looking back at some of the trades where we gave up first-round picks, and none of the players stand out that have been taken with those picks. And there's still some that we're waiting to see what happens with them. But the Eric Bledsoe trade was the only one, and that one wasn't like considered a bad trade for the Bucks at all. They gave up 1 first-round pick, which became Desmond Bane. Mm. But the next highest player on this list from picks we've given up is Kenrich Williams. He's the next talented. And then there's a whole bunch of Isaiah Todd, Isaiah Wong.
Isn't Trey Murphy one of the Pelicans picks?
He might be. I can look more into that.
I kind of think Trey Murphy was picked with one of the Drew Holiday picks.
Oh, okay. Still though, I would love Trey Murphy on the Bucks, but
yeah,
it's not like there was an Anthony Edwards that came out of this or something.
Yeah, it's not like when the Nets traded away the rights to Tatum and Jaylen Brown to the Celtics.
Yeah, that was bad.
But so I've been thinking about Horst, and I just want to reiterate, I don't think there's many people on earth, many people in basketball who could step in 2017 and do what he's done. And it's not been perfect, but what he's done, deserves applause. And
yeah,
I was thinking, I'm going to make a movie reference here. So, can you picture the scene in Avengers and in Infinity War when Thanos is saying, he's like, the universe needs to be checked, and Gamora's like, you don't know that. And then Thanos is like, I'm the only one who knows that. I'm the only one strong enough to do it, You know the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Horst is the only one who knows what it takes and knows how important it is to Milwaukee to keep Giannis here, And I just don't think there's many people in basketball who would be strong enough to do what he's done and make the crazy moves time after time after time and just totally sell his soul for the future. He sold the Bucks have no future. The Bucks are screwed. But what he's done is he's focused on the present so hard that he's done everything he can because he knows how important it is, and he doesn't care what people say about the future because all he cares about is right now. And there's gonna be downsides and negatives to it, but I picture it, man. Horst is gonna retire the same day that Giannis retires because the only thing that Horst cares about is Giannis, and he's gonna retire. He's going to get in his spaceship. He's going to fly to another planet. He's going to sit in his garden. He's going to watch the sunrise on a grateful universe, just like Thanos did. He deserves applause for how hard he's gone after this, and I think we underestimate how much it's taken from him to keep the Bucks where they're at, even though they've kind of got incrementally worse over the years.
Yeah, I love that connection, and I think we're definitely going to make that the thumbnail to this podcast, is putting John Horst's face on Thanos' body. So look out for that. But something I have been doing the last few big moves the Bucks have made, I did it with the Turner signing, the Dame waving. As soon as I saw the breaking news thing, I read that tweet from Shams, and I closed the app. I don't want to read any of the comments on the tweet. I don't want to read anything the Bucks fans are saying because they'll sway my opinion. So I've been trying to close the app and just stop and think, okay, that's crazy. What do I think about that? In both of these moves, I don't know, speaking for both of us, I feel like sometimes you get a little more emotional about it. Like it takes you a little bit to comprehend what's going on and you have like a more tie to these players. To me, I was really bummed about Dame, but I see from a basketball sense really quickly why I think that was good. And so, I don't know, that's been fun for me to do, just kind of close my eyes and be like, okay, what do I think about that? And I really was pleased with the direction they're going and his desire to just go all in again this year. And last thing, people are thinking this is one last chance to go all in. No. Now we're set up for 4 more years with Giannis and Miles Turner, so it's going to be fun. And we still have, Gary Trent. Hopefully, will extend next year. All those guys, and there's still a future beyond this year. So I think that's important to know as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In general, the way the Bucks have operated as a team has made me pay really close attention to free agency, and almost not even care about the draft. Yeah. Which. We talked earlier about how it's so jarring between these sports franchises because the Packers are the exact opposite. Yeah. I have, in my years of fandom, at times not even really looked at ESPN's ranking of the top 100 free agents. Sometimes I won't even look at that, and I'll spend my time grinding, 5th round draft prospect tape on YouTube because that's more interesting to me. And that's kind of how the Packers have built their team, which is so different than how the Bucks have done it. And, I don't think we need to go real deep in depth on how the Packers have done things like we did with the Bucks. But I have a couple trades that both of these teams, the Bucks and the Packers, have made in the last 5 years. Most of these are trades that I think our teams lost. And I want to kind of talk about, if it's a trade the Bucks made, what that trade would have looked like if it was the Packers that made the trade. So the first one we're going to start off with is the infamous Jay Crowder trade. So Jay Crowder at the time, all caps, boss man. So he was never an all-star level player, but he had in the past been a really good starter on contending and finals caliber teams. But then he kind of had a year off, had some holdout type stuff. The Bucks traded for him at a time where I didn't expect him to start, but I expected him to be a key rotational player and a guy that closed in certain situations and in playoff lineups. Yeah. The Bucks traded 5 second-round picks for Jay Crowder. And so I've been trying to think, what is the NFL equivalent of 5 second-round picks? What do you think?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
I was kind of thinking, is 5 second-round picks, is it 1 third-round pick or 1
Yeah, probably around. I was thinking like a third and a sixth or something. I don't know.
Okay. So should we say like a high third-round pick?
Yeah. Which, just a quick note on that, I would have rather given up 5 first-round picks with how the Bucks draft. They always hit on guys in the second round, but their first-rounders are trash.
Sorry if you're listening to this, Rashad Vaughn. Okay, so let's pretend the Packers are going to make the equivalent of the Jay Crowder trade right now. So we got to think of an NFL player who was, a high-level contributor for a real contending team, but wasn't going to be a Pro Bowl type player, but is probably 1, maybe 2 years past that point. So he's over the hill, and they're just trying to squeeze what they can get out of him. I have a couple names. So we're trading a high third-round pick for this player for the Packers.
Okay.
Tell me if you do this. A high third-round pick for Tyler Lockett.
Not a chance.
Yeah. A high third-round pick for Jadeveon Clowney.
Not a chance.
A high third-round pick for Darius Slay.
No.
Yeah. So in this case, to me, I think it's fair to say I think the way the Packers do business is a little bit better than how the Bucks did it in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good argument. Man, that puts it in perspective.
And there's some of these that go both ways. So I've got another one for you. This was one of my least favorite Bucks trades ever made, and it was the Dante DiVincenzo trade for Serge Ibaka. So if you remember, at the time, they had Grayson Allen on the team. Dante had come back from the foot injury and had been in the midst of a pretty bad shooting slump. But other than that, was kind of the same player that he had always been. Was the type of guy who was like a fringe starter or a good rotational player that we all thought had potential to be a good player but was never going to be an all-star. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then during that season, if I remember right, that was the year that Brook Lopez was out for most of it with back surgery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they needed a center to play some minutes in the regular season, but we all knew Brook was going to come back and was going to start all through the playoffs. So the Bucks made a decision to trade their young guard, who had promise, for an old, over-the-hump center who would play in the regular season but would probably get played off the court in the playoffs. And they traded Dante for Serge Ibaka. So I'm trying to think of, let's say the Packers have a young player that's a fringe starter on their team right now that we think has potential to be a really good starter for us or for a future team, but is probably never going to be a Pro Bowler. To me, 2 names that come to mind, Carrington Valentine and Rasheed Walker.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think DiVincenzo, if you look at it now, the trade looks horrible, but in the moment, DiVincenzo was really struggling. And we had Pat Connaughton, too, coming off like his best season of his career, so there's a lot of guards. And so, yeah, I think that's a fair comparison.
And I know I am more emotional about this stuff, but I thought the trade sucked in the moment. I hated it right from the beginning. And I know they did have a logjam. So let's say Rasheed Walker, because the Packers kind of have a logjam at tackle too.
Yeah.
So let's say the Packers decide, okay, Lucas Van Ness got hurt in training camp. We really need an edge rusher. So we're going to take Rasheed Walker, and we're going to trade Rasheed Walker straight up for Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah, I'd be mad about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though somehow he still has 10 sacks a year.
Yeah, I don't get that. Yeah. So I think 2 things the Packers do that I like better than the Bucks is they value those draft picks and they value youth over experience.
Yeah. As we were preparing for this podcast, I kind of went another direction with it. And I was thinking about times the Packers could have made a trade in their history. And they didn't.
Ooh.
Did you go this route too?
Yeah, we're about to go this route if you want to save it. Or do you want to start us off? Do you want to start us off?
Sure. Let me pull it up. Okay. One of the big ones that came to mind, this was from research that I remembered this. I'm going to talk about Will Fuller from the Texans. So Will Fuller was in a contract dispute. Wait, never mind. I got that wrong. Let me see what I had written down. There was a dispute with the Packers and the Texans about pick compensation and restructuring his contract and all this, but there was a lot of reports saying the Packers are all in on Will Fuller. They're going after him. And this is in 2020 when the Packers starting receivers, let me pull it up. They had Davante Adams, who had one of his best seasons of his career. Valdez-Scantling, who only had 33 catches. Allen Lazard, 33 catches. After that, Equanimeous St. Brown, 7 catches. And so just a horrible receiver core outside of Davante. This is Rodgers' MVP season. This is the year they lost to the Buccaneers in the NFC title game. And at the deadline, everyone's saying you wouldn't need to trade for a receiver. And they couldn't decide on pick compensation, didn't trade for Will Fuller. He's a guy that had like over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns that year. So I don't know. That was just an example I thought of that would have been a really good time to make a trade to get another guy in there for Rodgers. A couple other names that came up. Emmanuel Sanders from the 49ers. Zach Ertz apparently in 2021 became disgruntled because the Eagles were really bad and he wanted out. And the Packers, there was rumors they're going to go after him to pair him with Tonyan. And he ended up getting traded for a 5th-round pick to the Cardinals. Brandon Cooks, we've been linked to multiple times. And so, I don't know, just a lot of times when Rodgers was having an MVP season, had an awful defense, had awful receivers, an awful running back. And they're just like, oh, we'll just see what we can do in next year's draft. But didn't even really care that they were, I don't know, 9-2 at the trade deadline or something, you know. And so the trade deadline didn't matter. So 2020, and then I guess we can get to this in a second, but they draft Jordan Love to replace Rodgers. John Horst would never do that.
Never.
But never even think about doing something like that. But the Packers were so, I don't even know what they were thinking. I'm still mad about that, even though I love Jordan Love. But every Packers fan, no matter how much you love Jordan Love, can still be mad about how that was so stupid when they were in the peak, championship contention period. So
yeah, I was so mad when that happened, so mad.
Yeah.
But I remember. So you were talking about all those wide receiver moves they almost made, and then they chickened out, or it didn't work out for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. The one that I will never get over is 2021 when Odell Beckham was a free agent. I mean, he got released and was free to sign anywhere. He was between the Rams and the Packers, and the Packers squabbled with him over like an extra $500K or something. Then the Rams signed him and then went on and won the Super Bowl. And the Packers, you're right, they were like 10-2 at that point. They could have had Odell, and Odell was good still then. And they could have paired Odell with Davante Adams, and I mean that was the year they lost the 49ers because they scored 6 points or 10 points or something like that in that divisional round game. Would have probably helped to have another really good pass catcher on that team that they could have had for just $500K if they would have given him $500K more, but they didn't, and that's a move John Horst would have made in his sleep 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, for sure. Another one that I just remembered that I'd written down was 2021. Rodgers was frustrated after not making any moves the season before. He was audibly frustrated. And he requested the Packers go out and sign Randall Cobb back. Cobb is 30-something years old, way out of his prime. And Rodgers has to convince the Packers to go sign Randall Cobb, and they did nothing else. And so, stuff like that where everyone thinks Rodgers is a diva for like demanding things and getting frustrated. And I think I just saw it brought back up again when remember when Jake Kumaro was incredible in training camp and preseason, and then the Packers cut him, and Rodgers was like, okay, that's the last straw. Stuff like that, though, because they didn't do anything for him. He had to rely on 7th-round picks to come in and try to be good.
Yeah, and they gave him good players. They supported him with good teams most of the time, at least. But you're right. They never bent to his will and like did what they could to make his wishes come true, like Horst has done for Giannis. So I got a couple Packers trades. So I think the biggest thing so far that I will always be quick to criticize Goody for is the Devontae Adams trade. So you're coming off a season when they were 13-4, they looked really, really good. They had just signed Aaron Rodgers to the highest contract in the NFL for a quarterback. They made all the indications that they wanted to run it back. And then for some reason they decide to trade Devontae Adams, which I don't understand. Like, if you're going to spend the money on Rodgers, why don't you keep Devontae and do it right? But instead they try to, half-ass it kind of, and they trade Devontae. They get some good players back in return, but there's no way in hell the Bucks ever make that trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they kind of had to do it with Middleton trading him for Kuzma to get under the apron, but I feel like that's totally different.
Yeah. Adams was still in his prime. He went on to have some great years in Oakland, even a terrible quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and that's not the case with Middleton, but, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Another one I thought of, probably the best trade Horst has ever made was the Bledsoe and George Hill for Drew Holiday trade.
Mm-hmm.
So in that trade, he traded Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, 3 first-round picks, and 3 first-round pick swaps to get Drew Holiday from the Pelicans.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of what an NFL equivalent of that would be, and you can't equivalent it to anything the Packers have done because they've never made a trade like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of thinking, could you say it's roughly the same as what if the Packers tomorrow traded Romeo Doubs and a first-round pick to the Steelers to get TJ Watt?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I would do it.
I would do it too, but the Packers never will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, it's freaking terrifying being a Bucks fan. And it's freaking slow being a Packers fan sometimes.
That's the best way to describe it, really.
Yeah. But I love both.
Yeah, I do too. It's kind of fun to get experience with both strategies.
Yeah.
You really did boil it down well with that one sentence there, though.
And it's cool that they both won championships, too, so it's shown to work. But it's been a long time since it's worked for the Packers. A whole different era of football. So, I don't know. I kind of wish to see them get a little more aggressive.
Yeah, and I think they have with some of the free agent signings they've made and the way they've done their contracts a little bit. But, yeah, you're right. I'd like to see them part with mid to late round picks more often to go get real players.
Yeah.
All right, but so we want to move on to one last topic for the night. Real quickly, I've been thinking, so I'm really confused by what the Knicks have done with their coach this offseason. Am I the only one?
Yeah, very confused.
Yeah. So they fired Tibbs, one of the great coaches in the NBA. He brought the Knicks, to the conference finals, a place they hadn't been anywhere near that in a long time. And they promptly fire him like a day after they lose in the playoffs. It felt like they had decided they were going to do that months ago, which was weird to me. And then they can't get anyone to interview with them. And just today, they decided to hire Mike Brown. And the more I think about it with the NBA, man, it's weird how these coaches, they coach a team for 3 years, it goes stale, they get fired, they take a year off, they get hired to another team. Like, some of these coaches are on like their 5th team, it feels like. And they're like, Mike Brown, he'll get fired from the Knicks in 3 years, and then maybe the Bucks will hire him next. And
yeah,
it just seems like there's certain guys, certain names, and Doc Rivers is one of them that just never go away.
Yeah. I can't wait because in a second we're going to compare these NBA coaches to NFL coaches. So I'm excited for that. But just to talk about the Knicks real quick, I have a friend that's a Knicks fan, and I was texting him just literally the day they lost, and I was like, do you put any of this blame on Tibbs? And he's like, no, and I'm tired of seeing fans talk about it because there's no way they'd fire him. They, like you said, made the ESF for the first time in who knows how long. I don't remember how long. It's been forever. But the big knock on him is that he played the starters too much, and he put too much on Jalen Brunson. And I've seen comparisons drawn to when he was the coach of the Bulls and put way too much on Derrick Rose, and then Derrick Rose had injury after injury because he was being overplayed. And so I think that's a big concern from the Knicks front office is he'll play his starters 46 minutes if he has to in regular season games. And so that part is shocking and I think needed to change, but I don't think it was worth firing him. And my friend asked me, because he's kind of a more recent NBA fan, so he doesn't know as much as me and like you might about the history of some of these coaches, and so he asked me, is Mike Brown a good coach? Like, is that a positive move for the Knicks from Tibbs? And I said, honestly, I'd put Mike Brown, Tibbs, Doc Rivers, all these guys in the same tier. I think it's a totally lateral movement going to Mike Brown, but it's probably a backwards movement because it's less consistency from last year, so they're going to have to learn a whole new system and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know why all these same coaches keep coming back because Mike Brown isn't bad. But I look at guys like Sam Cassell, who's sitting on the Sixers staff, that is just a brilliant basketball mind that has not gotten a chance because all these same guys keep coming back and I guess have the respect of these owners. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's accurate to say that, because in the NFL, I feel like you have coaches that have been play callers on one side of the ball that are like these bright up-and-coming minds that everybody knows their name and their fans all really want them to get hired as the next head coach for their struggling team. But I kind of feel like the NBA just doesn't produce new coaches in the same way that the NFL does.
Yeah, I think as an NFL coach, just a football coach in general, you can have more of an impact on your team's winning than NBA coaches do. Just because NBA is so star heavy, and if you have a LeBron James, he's gonna dictate your team. He's gonna run the show, and I mean you can install an offense and a defense, but there's only so much your players can do with it. So yeah, I just think it's more obvious when offensive coordinators are drawing up these incredible plays and using their players in a brilliant way that gets them national attention to where they can leverage that into a head coaching position. But NBA doesn't have that necessity or that luxury, I don't think, as coaches.
Yeah. There's certain guys. I really hope that Adrian Griffin was going to be one of those guys. I remember reading his bio and being like, oh yeah, he studied under Billy Donovan and Nick Nurse, and I think even Popovich was back there a while, but too bad he kept missing practices because he was at the casino.
Yeah. Oh man.
So Doc Rivers, he won the title in 2008. The same year that Mike Tomlin won his Super Bowl with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Dang it.
Both of those guys. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, you take it then. You take it.
No, I want to hear. Okay. I was just going to make that same comparison. Won in 2008. Hasn't won since. And I had pulled up their last, I don't know how many years. So, looking at the Steelers, Mike Tomlin took over in 2007. They lost in the wild card round. The next year won the Super Bowl. So in his second season. Then after that, 9-7. Then 12-4, lost in the Super Bowl to the Packers. Next year, 12-4, lost in the wild card round. Then 8-8, lost in the wild card, lost division, lost conference round, lost in the divisional round, lost in the wild card, lost in the wild card, 9-8, wild card. So consistently in the playoffs, consistently has a winning record, won one Super Bowl, is a very loved coach. All the fans, all the media, all the players love Mike Tomlin. He continues to have that respect as one of the best coaches in the league. And I think where Doc Rivers and Tomlin are similar is that they've won one championship, had some playoff success, some losses in the playoffs, but I think they're just great leaders. I think every time you hear Doc speak, I just fully jump on board. I'm like, okay, this guy is smart. He can convince me to get excited about anything, but then his coaching is just a little bit outdated and struggles with lineups, things like that. But I think where Tomlin's better is he hasn't had as much talent as Doc Rivers had. Tomlin oftentimes has a really good defense, not a lot of flashy players on offense, and he's able to continue to pump out winning records. So I think he's a better coach, but it's just hard not to make that comparison between those two.
Yeah. I think it's a really good comparison, and I would agree that Tomlin's the better coach if you really had to compare him side by side across the sports. He just has a trait of being able to manage the locker room, and you think about the guys that have been through there, the Chase Claypools, the Juju Smith-Schusters, the Antonio Browns, Ben Roethlisbergers, Le'Veon Bells, and he kept all of that together. That is as impressive as even you throw George Pickens in there now too. I know he's gone, but I just don't know if Doc has one trait or specialty, or if you say what's Doc Rivers good at as a coach, most NBA fans wouldn't be able to tell you anything.
Yeah, another comparison I made was to Mike McCarthy. I don't know, just a coach that continues to hang around because of his one championship. And I don't know, I don't think McCarthy is as much of a leader as Doc, so I don't know why, but McCarthy, I think, was carried by Favre and Rodgers, and I don't know how he stayed with the Cowboys so long. I don't want to hate on our former coach, but yeah, he's just one of those guys that continued to. He must have been paying Jerry Jones under the table or something.
So I want to push back against that a little bit, because I have McCarthy compared to a slightly different NBA coach. I think McCarthy was definitely really good as a coach at the beginning. The game kind of passed him by, struggled his last few years with the Packers, got fired, took a year off. But those first few seasons at the Cowboys were pretty good. I mean, Dak was a second-team All-Pro at one point, and the reason that Dak is being paid $60 million a year is because of how good those first few years with McCarthy were. He kind of had to change his offense a little bit. So I drew the comparison from Mike McCarthy to Rick Carlisle, where he kind of had a really hot start, a big lull, reinvented himself a little bit with a different team, kind of caught lightning in a bottle again.
That's a good comparison, actually. I like that. Yeah,
Do you have any?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you had any others NBA coaches you want to talk about.
I didn't prepare any, but let me think. I think it's weird how certain coaches have stayed so long while others get fired so quickly. Like, there's been years where the Heat have been bad, but people just continue to say, oh, Spoelstra is a top 2 coach in the league. Like, when are they going to make a change there? And so it's just weird to think. I don't know. The owners just must be so loyal to certain coaches to a fault. And so you see it's so two-sided, to where some coaches will last only 6 months with the team. They're not succeeding, so they fire them, and some guys will last 4 decades. So I'm interested to see when those changes happen, if Spoelstra's ever out or Steve Kerr's ever out, because I don't even think Steve Kerr's that great of a coach, to be honest. Kind of a hot take, but he's another guy that I think has been just totally buoyed because of Curry and Durant and all those guys that came through Golden State. So I don't know.
I guess I'll ask you it this way. How many coaches in the NBA today do you think are like a true positive to their team that really improve, the collection of talent that they have?
That's a good question. Yeah, my hot take is that Steve Kerr is not.
Okay.
I do think Spoelstra is. Yeah, I didn't want to hate on Spoelstra at all. I'm just saying I wonder if there's ever going to be a time when they fire him. I think Carlisle is. Carlisle's one of my favorite coaches. But yeah, I think I want to stand on my claim from earlier that the star players, the roster construction really carries the coaches. And there's some situations like with Adrian Griffin where they fired him because the direction was just really bad with the team, the way things were going. But I think majority coaches are carried by the players, and so there's not anyone I would really I wouldn't trade for, like when was it the Nets that traded for Doc Rivers or Clippers?
Yes, it was the Clippers, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see a trade for a coach again. Just because I think teams have realized coach is important, but it's really the roster construction.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would put Steve Kerr, though, as a guy that elevates the team. I think I was impressed by how the Warriors turned it around so quickly after getting Butler this year. I thought they were an underrated, really good team that didn't get a chance to show it that deep into the playoffs.
Yeah. My last thing on Kerr, I think the Warriors have had it easy because with Curry, everyone knows the style of basketball they're going to play. They haven't had to change their offense for like a decade. And they continually just sign guys that come in and play that offense because they know how deadly it is. They know there's no one that can game plan for it. So you know who they're going to sign in free agency every year. They're going to go get the Buddy Hields and stuff like that. So I think Steve Kerr has just been kind of able to sit on his hands and like do some little changes in the offense, but he knows what the system is and he's just left it. So that's why I don't think he's as adaptable anymore.
I could see it, but the style they built was just so innovative at the beginning that I guess it's lasted for this long.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that's part of the reason why I'm kind of sad the Pacers are taking a step back, because they were set up so well to be the next innovation in basketball that was going to be fun to watch for the next few years. Yeah. And now they're just not. They're just not going to be that.
Yeah, I'm really bummed about that too. But can't wait for Miles Turner on the Bucks. Suck it, Pacers. Your ownership is embarrassing.
Yeah. Ours is better, and we have the guy that gave Deshaun Watson a guaranteed contract.
I saw someone post on Twitter, finally, what's his name, the owner?
Haslam?
Yeah, Haslam. He's like, finally Haslam realized he can cut a guy that has an Achilles injury.
Oh, that's good. Oh, man. Well, that's all I had on the show sheet for today. Is there anything else you want to add?
I just am really excited to see what the Bucks do here with their last couple of roster spots, and I think this roster isn't going to be finalized until the trade deadline. And so I think fans need to take a step back and not get too worried about checking Twitter for the next few days, expecting something big to happen. But I think they're going to fill out the point guard position with just a free agent signing, but it's going to be the first 50 games we're going to see how this team's going to be playing, and the big move's going to happen at the deadline to get ready for the playoffs. So have patience, but I think we should all be excited about what's going to happen because, as we know, Horst is not done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's only got a couple Infinity Stones. He's still going. We all need to be prepared to cheer for Kyle Kuzma to have the best first half of the season of his entire life. That needs to be objective number one as Bucks fans, because if he could have some sort of value, then that could change how the season goes. And I'm excited to watch him play really well and then get him the hell off my team. I cannot wait for that.
The Kyle Kuzma hate is getting out of hand, though, I must say, because I'm not a fan of him either. I think we have very similar opinions, but just the stuff that's being posted on Twitter, I feel so bad for that guy. Because it's not like he's making $50 million. He's making $20 million, and he'll probably come off the bench and be a decent bench player. But man,
yeah, he just has to know when he ended up getting traded for like one of the icons of Milwaukee that's going to have a statue and have his number retired. Like you're just not going to be well received when the team had to dump that guy to bring you in.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think the discourse would be a lot different if it was for, say, Pat Connaughton and some filler?
Oh, totally. And it's going to be different next year when Chris Middleton re-signs on a cheap free agent contract to come back to Milwaukee.
I'm still hoping that we trade Kuzma for Drew Holiday this year.
That'd be awesome. And then sign Chris Middleton and sign Thon Maker to the Summer League team. Because nobody really knows for sure. Thon Maker still could be like 23. Nobody knows for sure.
That's true. Last thing, do you think that Thanasis is going to have a spot on this team?
No, I don't. I think he'll always be close to the team, but I don't think he'll have a roster spot again.
Did you see the report about the Antetokounmpo's friend that was like starting a league and wanted Thanasis to be the face of it?
No?
There's some European league that, the brother's friend is a huge investor in, and he's like all but convinced Thanasis to come be on one of the teams, and he would kind of be the face of the new league. And so Thanasis apparently last year was looking at signing with a few other NBA teams despite being injured. But there's teams that wanted to bring in Thanasis because they thought it would get Giannis. But he declined, saying he was going to go be the face of this new European league. So I don't know if I believe it, but that could be something to watch out for. Is maybe he goes somewhere else if the Bucks don't sign him.
How cool would it be if 33-year-old Thanasis wins an MVP of some other Euro league?
That'd be so cool. Did you know he was the MVP of some other league, wasn't he?
When he was younger?
Yeah, hold on. Bear with me. I saw these. It was like the Thanasis Greek League stats. Let me look it up. I'm almost positive he was a champion and an MVP. Okay, so his career highlights in Greece on Wikipedia. Two-time Greek League champion 2018-2019. Greek Cup winner in 2019. Two-time Greek League most spectacular player 2018-2019. Two-time Greek League All-Star. Two-time Greek All-Star Game MVP. Dude was crazy in Greece, and so I hate when people say he's just a terrible basketball player because you go back and look at those stats and he won the Greek League MVP.
We should start a petition to change most valuable player to most spectacular player. That sounds so much better.
It does.
All right, well, that's all we got for tonight. So thanks to y'all for tuning in and listening. We're happy to have you. We will be trying to come back with another episode after the long holiday weekend where we'll do a deep dive on kind of free agency review across the entire NBA. We'll be sure to spend some time looking at the Bucks, but then also look into, some winners and losers of free agency so far.
Yeah. Get ready to talk a lot about the Celtics and the Hawks. Caw-caw!
I am excited to talk about the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets had a killer summer so far. And I also want to talk about how fun it's going to be to watch Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. just chucking up shots for the Nets this year.
Oh, man. They're both going to average 40 points a game, but the team's going to average 87 a game.
If there was like some season-long point total bet I could make on those two players, I would bet the over so hard on that right now.
Yeah.
As long as they stay healthy.
We're going to have so much to talk about next time. But
yeah. So that one might be a little bit of a longer episode, but we'll try and get this one out. We're recording today on July 2nd. We'll try and get this out tomorrow so it can be to you guys before the holiday. And we'll be back next week with some free agency recap in the NBA. Anything else, Sam, or should we call it?
Nope. Just thanks to all of our listeners. We love all four of you. See you guys.
We might have 5 now. Who knows?
All right. Peace out.
See ya.